He is sitting in silence, in front of Anandamayi Ma. There is nothing special about the place. No noise, no rush, just a simple moment. But somehow, it feels different. Because inside him, something is not at peace. From the outside, his life looks normal. He has responsibilities. He has plans. He has things to deal with, just like anyone else. But deep down, there is a question that won't leave him alone. A feeling that something isn't right. Like everything he's living is missing something. And maybe you've felt this too. Have you ever stopped for a moment and wondered if all of this really makes sense? If the way you live, think, worry is actually the truth, or just something you got used to? He looks around. People living their lives, rushing, solving things, worrying about tomorrow. Everything looks so real, so solid, so important. But at the same time, something inside him questions all of it. Because the more he observes, the more he notices that everything is always changing. Situations change, people change, feelings change. Even what felt certain yesterday, today is already different. And that starts to bother him. Because if everything keeps changing, then what is actually real? What truly remains? And it's this question, simple but deep, that brought him here. That question doesn't come out of nowhere. It's been building inside him for a long time. At first, it was just a feeling. Something subtle. Hard to explain. But over time, it started to grow. He began to notice things he never paid attention to before. The way his mood could change so quickly. The way a single thought could affect his entire day. One moment, everything feels fine. And then suddenly, something shifts. A memory, a worry, a thought about the future. And just like that, everything feels different. Nothing outside has really changed, but inside, it feels like everything has. Have you ever noticed that? How something small, almost nothing, can completely change the way you feel. And then you start thinking about it, going deeper into it, creating more thoughts, more scenarios, more what ifs, until something simple turns into something heavy, something that feels real. But is it? Or is it just something happening inside your mind? He starts to question this more seriously, because if his experience of life can change so fast, without anything actually changing outside, then what is he really experiencing? Reality? Or just his interpretation of it? This is where the confusion begins, because everything feels real. The emotions feel real. The thoughts feel real. The problems feel real. But at the same time, they come and go. Nothing stays. So now he finds himself in a strange place, caught between what feels real and what keeps changing all the time. And the more he looks at it, the harder it becomes to ignore. If everything he experiences can shift so easily, then maybe what he calls reality is not as solid as he always believed. And if that's true, then what is he actually living? Is he seeing things as they are? Or is he seeing everything through something else? Something that keeps changing moment by moment? This question starts to stay with him, following him, growing stronger, until it becomes impossible to ignore, because now, it's no longer just curiosity. It's something deeper, a need to understand, a need to know what is actually real. Before we go any further, I'd love to connect with you. If you're watching this, take a second to engage. Write your name and your city in the comments below. Now tell me honestly, what are you dealing with right now? Use this phrase. Right now, I'm facing Atiyo An. You're not alone. This is a space for truth. Over time, he starts hearing something that completely changes the way he looks at everything. People begin to say that the world is Maya, an illusion. At first, it sounds confusing, almost impossible to accept. Because how can this be an illusion? Everything feels too real. His body feels real. The people around him feel real. The problems he faces feel real. Even the pain feels real. So what does it really mean to say that all of this is an illusion? He keeps thinking about it, trying to make sense of it. And maybe you've wondered the same thing. If this isn't real, then why does it feel so solid? Why does it hurt when something goes wrong? Why do emotions feel so intense? Is this all just in the mind? Or is there something deeper behind this idea? He begins to observe more carefully, not just what's happening outside, but what's happening inside him. And something starts to become clear. His experience of life is always changing, constantly. A single thought appears, and suddenly, his mood shifts. A memory comes up, and emotions follow right after. Nothing actually changed outside, but inside, everything feels different. And that's when he notices something important. Most of what he experiences is not coming directly from life itself, but from how he interprets it, from the thoughts that appear, from the meaning he gives to things. Have you ever noticed that? How something small can happen, and your mind turns it into something much bigger. It creates stories. It adds fear. It builds scenarios that don't even exist. And in that moment, it feels completely real. But then, it passes. And when it passes, it doesn't seem as important anymore. So now he starts to question something deeper. If his experience can change so quickly, just because of a thought, then how real is that experience? And if everything he feels, everything he reacts to, everything he calls real, can shift from one moment to the next, then maybe it's not as solid as it seems. Maybe it's not as fixed as he always believed. And that's when the idea of Maya begins to make a little more sense. Not as something that doesn't exist, but as something that is always changing, always moving, always shifting. Something that appears real, but doesn't stay. And if it doesn't stay, if it's always changing, then can it truly be called real? Or is there something else, something deeper, that doesn't change at all? At this point, the question inside him becomes impossible to ignore. It's no longer just curiosity. It's something deeper, something that follows him everywhere. Because no matter what he does, no matter where he goes, that same doubt keeps coming back. If everything is changing, if everything comes and goes, then what is actually real? He tries to move on, to go back to his normal life, to focus on what he needs to do. But the question doesn't leave. It stays in the background, quiet, but constant. And the more he looks at the world around him, the more he sees it. Nothing stays the same. People change. Situations change. Even the way he sees things keeps changing. What once felt important later becomes irrelevant. What once felt painful eventually fades, and what once felt certain starts to feel unclear. It's like everything is in motion. Everything is temporary. And that realization starts to shake something inside him. Because if everything he trusted, everything he believed was solid, is actually unstable, then what is he holding on to? What is he calling real? And maybe you felt something like this too. That moment when you stop for a second and realize how fast everything changes, how nothing really stays the same. and it makes you wonder, what are you actually standing on? What in your life is truly stable? What doesn't disappear over time? Because if everything you point to, your body, your thoughts, your emotions, your experiences, is constantly changing, then none of that can be the final truth. None of that can be truly real in the deepest sense. And this is where the tension reaches its peak. Because now, the question is no longer abstract. It's personal, direct, unavoidable. So he decides to stop avoiding it. He looks at Anandamayi Ma, calm, still, completely at ease, as if she is not affected by any of this confusion. And something about that presence makes him feel that she knows, not as an idea, but as something real. So he gathers the courage, and finally,
For most of your life, you believed you were your thoughts. You believed the mind had to be fixed, silenced, controlled. But no one ever told you this. The mind was never the problem. The real trap is believing you are it. There is something in you that watches fear, that watches pain, that watches every thought arise and disappear. That observer has never suffered. It was never born, and it will never die. When this is seen, effort disappears. The spiritual search ends, because the one who was searching was never real. This is not a teaching to believe in. It is a direct experience, simple and deeply liberating. The book, The Awakening of the Observer, does not teach techniques. It points to the exact place where the ego dissolves. Each page is a mirror, and what is seen there cannot be unseen. If something in you recognizes these words, the call has already begun. Click the link in the comments and get your copy of The Awakening of the Observer now.
he asks the question that has been building inside him all this time. A simple question, but one that carries everything he's been trying to understand. If the world is Maya, then what is real? And in that moment, everything becomes silent. No movement, no distraction, just the weight of the question, hanging in the air. And maybe, if you were there, you would feel the same thing, that this is not just his question, it's yours too. Because at some point, everyone asks this, even if they don't say it out loud, because deep down, everyone wants to know what is actually real. And then, she doesn't answer, not right away. There's no rush, no immediate explanation, just silence. He looks at Anandamayi Ma, waiting, expecting something, a clear answer, a definition, something he can understand and hold on to. But instead, there's only stillness. And at first, it feels strange, almost uncomfortable, because he's used to answers, used to words, used to explanations that make things feel clear. But here, there is none of that. Just presence, just a quiet moment that seems to stretch longer than expected. And maybe you felt this before, that kind of silence, where you don't know what's coming next, where your mind starts trying to fill the gap, trying to guess the answer, trying to figure it out on its own, because that's what the mind does. It doesn't like not knowing. It wants something to hold on to, something solid, something certain. So in that silence, his mind begins to move, creating possibilities, looking for meaning, trying to reach a conclusion, but nothing comes. The silence remains, and something begins to shift, because for the first time, he's not getting an answer from outside. He's just sitting there, with the question, feeling it, without escaping it, without covering it with more thoughts. And that changes the experience completely, because now, it's no longer just a question in his mind. It's something deeper, something he's actually facing. And in that space, without words, without explanations, there's a different kind of awareness, a sense of something being present, even without an answer. And maybe that's the first thing to notice, before any explanation. before any teaching. There is something here, something that doesn't need words, something that doesn't change, something that is simply there. But he's not fully aware of it yet. Not clearly, not completely. He's still waiting, still expecting, still looking for something to come from her, because he believes the answer is about to be given. But what if the answer is not what he expects? What if it's not something to understand, but something to see? And as the silence continues, it becomes clear. This moment itself is part of the answer. After a while, she finally speaks, calmly, without effort, and her words are simple. So simple that at first, they don't seem like enough. She looks at him and says, "What is real is what does not change." That's it. No long explanation. No complex idea. Just that. And for a moment, he doesn't fully understand. Because his mind was expecting something more, something deeper, something complicated. But this feels almost too simple. So he starts thinking about it, trying to make sense of those words. What does not change? And then he looks at his life. Everything he knows is always changing. His body changes. His thoughts change. His emotions change. People come and go. Situations begin and end. Nothing stays the same, not for long. So if everything he can see, everything he can feel, everything he can point to is constantly changing, then none of that fits the answer. None of that can be what she's pointing to. And that's when something inside him starts to shift. Because now, the question is no longer about the world. It's about something deeper. If everything changes, then what doesn't? And more importantly, is there something in his experience that has always been there, through every change? Something that was present in the past, is here now, and will still be here, no matter what happens next. And for the first time, he stops looking outside and begins to look within. And as he turns his attention inward, something begins to reveal itself, not as a thought, not as an idea, but as something he can directly notice. Because when he looks closely, everything he can observe is changing. Thoughts come and go. Emotions rise and fall. Sensations appear and disappear. Even his sense of identity, the way he sees himself, shifts over time. Nothing stays the same. But there is something different. Something subtle. Something that has been there the whole time. The one thing that has never left. The one thing that has been present in every moment of his life. Awareness. The simple fact that he knows what is happening. That he is aware of his thoughts, aware of his emotions, aware of his experiences. And when he sees this clearly, something clicks, because this awareness is not changing. It was there when he was a child. It is here now. And no matter what changes in his life, it remains silent, constant, unmoving. And maybe you can notice this too. Right now, as you're listening to this, you are aware. You are aware of these words, aware of your thoughts about these words, aware of whatever you're feeling in this moment. And that awareness is not coming and going like everything else. It's always here. So let me ask you something. Has that ever changed? Or has it always been there? No matter what you were going through. Because if everything you experience is changing, but the awareness of it is not, then maybe that's what she was pointing to. Not something outside. Not something you need to find, but something that has always been here. Quietly present, hidden in plain sight. And the reason it's often missed is because attention is always moving outward, chasing thoughts, following emotions, reacting to situations. But the moment attention turns back, even for a second, it becomes obvious. You are not just what you experience. You are the one who is aware of it, and that changes the entire question. Because now, it's no longer about what in the world is real. It's about what in you has always been real, what has never changed, even while everything else did. And once that is seen, even briefly, the idea of Maya begins to make sense in a completely different way. Not as something confusing, not as something abstract, but as something very clear. Everything that changes, everything that comes and goes, everything that appears and disappears is part of that movement, part of that illusion, and what remains, what has always been there, is something else entirely, something deeper, something real. And now, for the first time, he begins to understand what she meant. And in that moment, something becomes clear, not as a theory, not as something he needs to believe, but as something he can see for himself. The world is still there. Life continues. People move. Situations change. Nothing outside has stopped. But the way he sees it is no longer the same, because now he understands something simple. Everything that changes cannot be the ultimate reality. It can appear real. It can feel real. But it doesn't stay. And because it doesn't stay, it cannot be what is truly real. And yet, there's no need to reject the world, no need to deny life, because the point was never to escape it. It was to see it clearly, to recognize that what comes and goes is not what you truly are. And maybe you can feel this now, as you sit there, watching this, listening to these words. Everything in your experience is moving. Thoughts are appearing. Feelings are shifting. Even your attention is moving from one thing to another. But something is not moving. Something is simply here, aware, present, unchanged. And that has always been with you. Before every problem, before every fear, before every question, it was there. And it's still here now. So maybe the real question was never, what in the world is real? Maybe the real question is, what in you has never changed? Because once you see that, even for a moment, everything else starts to fall into place. The confusion fades, the search slows down, and something quiet, something simple, remains. Not something you have to find, not something you have to create, but something you've always been. And maybe that's what she was pointing to all along. Not an answer to think about, but something to recognize. Right here, right now. If you felt something shift inside you while watching this, don't ignore it. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends and family, because this message can reach someone who really needs it. Now, stay with this feeling. The next video on your screen is not random. It's the next step in your journey, so click and continue right now. And if you want to go deeper into this understanding, the book, The Awakening of the Observer, is waiting for you in the pinned comments, with deeper insights and daily practices you can actually apply. If this video touched your heart, consider supporting through Buy Me a Coffee. The link is also in the pinned comments. Your support helps this message grow. Don't stop here. Watch the next video now.